So, speaking of doing your thing, on March 12th of 2021, you released your 10th album, which is called Royal Destroyer.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this album and how it came together.
Yeah, we started sort of working on it pretty quickly after the whole Cobra Speed Venom session, because that became a very good album and very successful album, and a lot of people sort of saw it as a basically like almost like a comeback album. It was a very strong album, and so we sort of continued with that mindset and just went into writing mode. There was already some songs done, and we just continued. And when the whole touring cycle was done, we just went into the rehearsal room and did the good old thing. Just start to mess with the songs and play for hours and hours and try to improve everything. And in the end, we came up with I think we were up in like 12 songs when we said that, okay, let's stop here and let's focus on these songs and let's perfect them and do the best we can, and then pick 10 songs to the main album and let's use 2 songs as a bonus. So a similar mindset as with Cobra Speed Venom, and a similar mindset like we did back in the days, being together as a band and rehearsing and all that sort of band feel to it, because it felt so good with the Cobra Speed Venom, and because that was the album we had a very solid lineup, and we managed to do a good album. So we just continue with the sort of same vibe, and we were all in a good headspace because we got some fantastic reviews and feedback. I mean that sort of thing, it just adds energy, it makes you happy to write music, So that was the mindset, we came from a good place.
So you mentioned that in the early days, the songwriting was split between the 2 guitarists, yourself and Magnus. Magnus more influenced by the American death metal, yourself influenced by bands like Edge of Sanity. How has that changed? What would you say your songwriting process is like now compared to the old days?
I think it's still there. I can still feel that sort of. It's a pretty drastic thing to say that. Yeah, Magnus does the brutal stuff. I do the melodic. But it still makes a bit sense, What can I say? A more typical song for Magnus is like Ultra Faust and Let the Hammering Begin, and a typical song for me is like Beyond the Frail and maybe Glorious Hades. I'm the one that usually like to take the tempo down sometimes and do a bit slower stuff, and also like the ballad that we call the ballad We Drift On. That was a sort of my idea as well. So we still have that sort of separation in a way, but then again, it's not like I do my song and no one else have anything to say about it. We mess around a lot with other people's songs. I can add melodies to Magnus stuff, and Magnus has ideas to my songs, like let's rearrange that or whatever. So, but I can still feel it that Magnus is a bit more sort of brutal punkish style, and I'm the more sort of melodic maybe in a sense. But nowadays we have Robin. He wrote 2 songs to this album, and also 2 songs to Cobra Speed Venom. And also, it happens like once every 10th year, but Johan also wrote a song. He was responsible 50% for the opening track, Baptized in Violence. So everybody except Henrik wrote some music to this new one. So that's cool.
Now, at what point do you bring your songs to the band? Like how finished are they when you submit a song to the band?
From my songs, they are pretty much done, at least for what I consider done. Then a lot of things can happen, because I can also play the drums. And recently I've asked my son, because he's a fucking good death metal singer, he helps me to demo songs. So I do pretty much complete recordings of my songs, and then I send it to the guys. And then, we get together and start messing with it, if there's something that needs to be changed. Magnus' songs are a bit more open. He basically writes more from the sort of guitar and bass oriented. He has the riffs and everything is done, but maybe not all the sort of drum beats and stuff like that. Maybe that is not really done, or maybe what tempo it should be. It's more about the riffs and that stuff. We work a bit more on Magnus' songs, so to say.
So I've read that Royal Destroyer is a sequel to Cobra Speed Venom. In what ways is Royal Destroyer a sequel to the previous album, as opposed to just a new Crown album?
I think it is in that sense that, as I said earlier, that we had so much same mindset and mentality how to approach the album. And also we used the same studio. We went into Studio Fredman again, and we also used the same cover artist, Christian Sloan Hall. And for us, musically, it's not 10 years in between the albums. So it's only like 3 years in between the albums. So in those 3 years, our sort of inspirations didn't drastically change, So it's pretty much the same mindset on Cobra Speed Venom and this album, in my opinion. And I think, in a sense, they belong together. So now we're actually talking about maybe we need to do a trilogy. We need to sort of make the third album and bind it together, all these three or whatever. So, but yeah, it's maybe from an outside view, when they hear this, they say, "Oh, it's a new album." But for us, they feel that a bit they belong together,
So you spoke about having a similar mentality for this album that you did for the previous album. Can you describe a little bit more what that mentality was? What were your intentions with this album and the previous album?
Yeah, I must say that before Cobra Speed Venom, we did 2 albums that differed quite a lot from our sort of regular albums. First of all, we did a Doomsday King album. We had a different singer on it. Jonas Stålhammar was the singer. And then we did Death Is Not Dead. That was an album that became very, very special in many ways because we didn't have a solid lineup. I ended up doing the drums. I also produced it. I did the guitars. I mean, there's a lot of weird things that happened on that album. And maybe we rushed a bit into doing it. And maybe that album, for me, when I sort of think about it, I just wish that we could have waited a couple more months. We should have onboarded Henrik for the drums, worked a bit more, then it would have been so much better album. And also Death Is Not Dead was a kind of album where we basically didn't rehearse. We sent files to each other and, tried that modern approach to it, And there are still a few songs on that album that we had never rehearsed. So it was a really strange way of doing albums. So that was what we realized with Cobra Speed Venom, that, okay, we are a bit old school in this manner. We do the best work when we rehearse. And also when we go into the studio, we don't go in one by one. We go in like a fucking gang and we spend time together in the studio and, do the band thing. And that became so obvious that Cobra Speed Venom became so much better album. And that's what we continue with Royal Destroyer. We did it like a band and we spent, a week in the studio all together. And it was also so well prepared with all the rehearsing that when we were in the studio, we recorded absolutely everything, including vocals, in 7 days. So that was a quite sort of world record for us. And then there was another period for the mixing, but for the recording, it was like 7 days. So it's very spontaneous, not about perfecting and editing stuff. It was all about capturing performances, if that take felt good, then we just move on to the next. Try to be a bit more spontaneous and not so fucking anal about, we need to sample this snare and replace it and put it perfect on the grid, and nothing like that. It's like real drums and real amps and real performances. And that's what I'm really proud of, because I can talk shitlongs about, producing albums and stuff like that. That's basically my passion. But I mean, nowadays it's not difficult to make a perfect album in that sense that it's perfectly performed, because it's all about just dedicating a few hours to and just edit the drums and edit every guitar part. I mean, make it sound perfect, But I think that kind of approach is so fucking boring. So I want to feel that there's actual band playing there. So that's what we went with, Henrik did 1-2 takes per song, on the drums, and that was enough. Yeah, it's perfect, Then we just move on to the next one. So I think there's a bit of that rough punk edge feel to it, but at the same time, the production is really sort of fat and heavy and, good. I mean, obviously, Fredrik Nordström knows his shit, after all the albums he's done. But I really like that approach, try to just capture how we sound instead of relying on a fucking computer and drum machine,